Greetings and welcome to Astrophotography Japan. In and around the Tokyo area, what one might call Eastern Japan, the winter in my opinion is fairly dry and only moderately cold. It sometimes dips below 0 centigrade into freezing temperatures, but rarely. Certainly we get more clear skies in the winter than during any other season. Because of the chilly weather, it is during this time that personally I like to visit Japanese hot spring resorts called onsen to enjoy volcanic natural hot spring waters. Why the early months of this year are considered off-season is a mystery to me, but I'm not complaining. Hotel rates are lower, it's far less crowded, and there's so many choices. Last month I decided to try a new onsen resort location at the seaside town of Izu-Atagawa. Now, some of you may recognize that I have taken brief astrophotography trips to the Izu Peninsula a few times before, specifically to Shimoda and Komuro Mountain, which is near Ito. The darker Bortle Class 4 skies and easy train access for me make it an attractive destination for deep sky imaging. This trip had 3 main objectives. 1. To explore the area for possible sites suitable for serious astrophotography in the future. 2. To thoroughly enjoy and relax in the hot spring baths. And 3. To do a little casual deep sky imaging to explore the skies and have a little imaging fun. I mention this because if you're expecting some amazing and beautiful images in this YouTube video, you may be a bit disappointed. I got some nice pictures, which were surprising to me, but certainly not epic or brag-worthy. Izu-Atagawa is located along the eastern shoreline and about halfway down the peninsula. I will spare you the rail travel details on this trip since it is pretty much the same as I described in earlier Astrophotography Japan episodes 19 and 29, just a little bit further down the line. The train station is small and in the middle of a vertically oriented town that rises from a sandy seaside beach, steeply up cliffs and hillsides to several large resort hotels perched high above and overlooking the ocean below. Fortunately, there was a hotel shuttle bus waiting for me that drove me up to the Izu-Atagawa Prince Hotel. Walking a few hundred meters up the steeply inclined roads would have been a real challenge with my 23 kilograms of clothing and equipment. The hotel decor was in classic Japanese style, beautifully maintained and stunningly nice for a discounted $100 per night price. From the outside, it looked modern, with hot spring well pressure release towers emitting steam into the cold winter air. It had an attractive and spacious lobby and hallways adorned tastefully with Japanese style art and design. The rooms were lovely and compared to the rate I paid, typically cost 2 to 3 times that much during the peak season, which starts in April or May. I loved those winter rates. I purposely arrived early to have ample time to explore for potential imaging sites. On Google Maps, I previously identified a few possibilities. After exploring them, I settled on this place, Atagawa Onsen Sakurayama Park. It was only a few minutes away, and it also had a nice overlook to the ocean. The overlook actually was an overhanging reinforced concrete platform, which I worried might have some tiny shake or vibration, but that proved not to be the case. It was not so secluded and dark, but definitely close and convenient. However, There were two issues that needed to be contended with that night: gusty winds and some annoying park lighting. Given the cold temperature and the casual nature of my trip, I decided to set up the rig just before sunset and stop imaging around 11:30 p.m. to give me at least 4 hours of good darkness with which to work and ample time to pack up. At the hotel, the hot spring baths closed up at 1 a.m., so my intention was to get back sometime just after midnight with plenty of time to take a dip and warm up before bed. On this trip, I brought minimal equipment that mainly centered around my Askar FMA135 astrograph lens and the AM3 mount. I wanted to test out this compact and wide-field equipment combination for future travel adventures. Also, in the minimalist frame of mind, I decided not to employ any guiding on this night. With a good polar alignment, I expected that the AM3 mount would keep star tracking steady enough to get several minute exposures with the short 135mm astrograph lens. To start off the night, and because I never imaged it before under dark skies, I focused my attention on M42, the Great Orion Nebula. After that, I selected one of the largest nebulae targets in the winter sky, SH2-240, the Spaghetti Nebula. And finally, NGC 2359, or Thor's Helmet. Each of these targets had a meridian transit early in the night on this date of March 3rd, so I needed to capture them now or wait until next season. Here is my equipment setup on the concrete overlook structure. I kept it very low to leverage the protective 4-foot-high walls to block wind and provide some shade from the park lighting. My OTA was pointed east, and the park lighting was in the opposite direction to the west. My experience in the past has been that street-level lighting, if properly shaded, does not counter the benefits of darker skies. The lack of sky glow here in Izu was still evident despite the artificial lighting, so I hoped and expected the imaging to still be a significant improvement over Yokohama. Polar alignment was simple using the ASIAIR and worked well in the classic mode focused on Polaris. I achieved an alignment calibration to 15 arc minutes and checked it twice. A level tripod and good alignment was critical since I was not employing guiding. I also performed a precise focus using a batten-off mask on the star Betelgeuse. I was then ready to proceed with my deep sky imaging. Now, M42, the Great Orion Nebula, is one of the brightest targets in the night sky, so of course I knew it would not be a challenge. However, in the past, I only used a dual narrowband filter on this target, but this time I wanted to experiment with something different. So I decided to compare images taken with a UV IR cut filter versus the Optical L Extreme filter, which I use routinely when imaging all deep sky emission targets in Yokohama. I wondered what would the Orion Nebula look like if captured in luminance or broadband instead of dual narrowband. This was my opportunity to try and explore that possibility. Let me show you the data. Shown on the right is an integrated image of M42 consisting of only 10 minutes total exposure time from 15-second subframes using the Zvibony UV IR cut filter. Shown on the left is a 50-minute integrated image of M42 using the Optical L Extreme filter. These OLX subframes taken in 7nm narrowband were 30-second exposures. To process these images, I basically balanced the colors, stretched and developed these images in GIMP independently to the best of my abilities. The target is so bright, there was no need for star extraction or denoise adjustments. The signal-to-noise or contrast was a bit superior with the dual narrowband filter image as expected, but both turned out quite lovely. To my surprise, the natural color palette that I captured for each of these images appeared to be very different. The UV-IR cut filter was especially good at capturing the natural blues and revealing the dusty reflection components of the nearby Running Man Nebula. Personally, I like the UV-IR cut filter image much better, don't you? Actually, I had never personally observed that before, and frankly, the dramatic difference surprised me. So I made a mental note to sometime image M42 in the future with a variety of filters just to see the differential effects on the final image. In this video, it's not my intention to dive deep into any image analysis or speculation. I am simply going to show you my images, explain how I generated them, and let you experience and ponder the results. Again, please realize my intention on this night was to have some fun and to do some casual imaging. No deep dive, long exposure, serious astrophotography. So, after spending some time on Orion, I next turned my attention to the Spaghetti Nebula. My attempts to image the Spaghetti Nebula under the Bortle Class 7 plus skies of Yokohama were only minimally successful in the past. The nebula is simply too diffuse and dim, and I could only capture the brighter regions of it due to the Yokohama ambient sky light pollution. But here under the Bortle Class 4 skies of Izu, I hoped it would be more successful. Again, using the same OTA setup, I captured 20 frames at 300 seconds each for a total of 100 minutes of data on the Spaghetti Nebula. The polar alignment seemed to be spot on. Shown here is a single 5-minute subframe exposure that I highly stretched for bringing up the starry background and exported it as a JPEG. Next to it is a zoomed portion of that image taken from near the center of the field of view. The stars look quite round with no trailing at all. It appears that the tracking was fantastic, despite no guiding. During the Spaghetti Nebula imaging run, the sensor temperature was consistently around 11 to 12 degrees centigrade thanks to the cold winter night. A single frame exposure on my computer tablet, displayed by the ASIAIR apply, looked very promising. I could vaguely make out an entire circle of red nebulosity which almost fitted the entire field of view. And despite the gusty winds, all of my subframes were usable thanks to this small Askar telescope footprint and the stability and strength of the ZWO AM3 harmonic drive mount and tripod. The performance of this matched equipment combination was simply outstanding. As usual, later that week, I stacked my images in Deep Sky Stacker, and this time I used StarNet++ to remove the stars, processed both the starless and starry images in GIMP, and then reintegrated the image and refined it in Topaz denoise. Here it is, the SH2-240 Spaghetti Nebula. As you may know, the Spaghetti Nebula is a supernova remnant located about 3,000 light-years away from our solar system. It is about 160 light-years in diameter and covers nearly 3 degrees of our nighttime sky. At its core is believed to be a rapidly spinning neutron star, basically a pulsar, that is emitting strong radio signals. For your information, the field of view of this image is around 4.5 degrees on each side, and the small bright emission nebula down there in the right-hand lower corner is SH2-242. However, I could not find any detailed information about it on the internet. Of course, overall, the final image definitely could use more integration time than just the 100 minutes captured on this particular night, but it was a dramatic improvement compared to my prior efforts. After that session, I was keeping my eye on the clock. It was after 10:30 p.m., and I knew that the hotel onsen baths were closing in a little over 2 hours, but that meant I still had more time to explore the skies. So I opened some Daiginjyo sake that I previously bought at the local convenience store, took a swig straight from the bottle like a defiant alcoholic, and considered my next target. Strangely, this was the first time I actually had some sake with me during imaging. Usually it is either a craft beer or something non-alcoholic, But this night, it just seemed like the perfect match to complete the Izu-Atagawa experience. I guess you just had to be there. Next, I slewed my scope toward NGC 2359, the Thor's Helmet Nebula. I think this is one of the most beautiful and interesting looking nebulae in the night sky. It is smallish in size, being only 10 arc minutes by 5 arc minutes, and around magnitude 11.5. At my latitude, it transits the meridian at about only 40 to 42 degrees altitude. And frankly, all of those statistics make it a bit difficult to capture a good image in Yokohama. Unfortunately, here in Izu, all I had was my 135mm Askar lens. Not enough focal length to properly image this small target, but still I was curious. And when I saw the first exposure on my computer tablet screen, I definitely wanted to continue because it was visually stunning. The nebula was tiny in the field of view, but beautifully colored and surprisingly bright. So I captured 7 more frames at 5 minutes each for a total of 40 minutes integration time. Here is the fully processed image. The color contrast of this nebula versus the blackness of space and the starry display surrounding it is beautiful in my eyes. There were even a few star clusters captured in the field of view as well, such as NGC 2360, Caroline's cluster in the upper right-hand corner, and NGC 2345. Both are visible in this image. Other clusters are also included, but not readily discernible at this low focal length. Furthermore, I randomly noted an obscure star on the right side of this image for your reference. This happens to be about magnitude 5.5 to give you some sort of brightness context. Thor's Helmet Nebula, or NGC 2359, is an emission nebula bubble in the constellation Canis Major. It is about 30 light-years across and located nearly 15,000 light-years away. Due to complicating factors, its age is difficult to estimate. However, it is likely between 80 and 240,000 years old. The central star created the nebula bubble structure by the force of its stellar wind. It is in a late pre-supernova stage of evolution with a spectral profile suggesting it should be classified as a Wolf-Rayet star. After all that, it took me only about a half hour to pack up my equipment, and just after midnight, I was back in my hotel room. There was still plenty of time before closing at 1 a.m., so I shed all of my winter clothing, put on my yukata robe, and strolled down to the men's onsen bath facilities. Not surprisingly, I was the only person there at that late hour, around 12:30 a.m., so I could easily take a few photos and videos. Frankly, it was the most elaborate and interesting bath layout of any resort I have ever visited so far in Japan. It was traditional, beautiful, thoroughly relaxing, especially after spending the last 6 hours or so out in the cold, dark winter night. and I was asleep by 1:30 a.m. I do not think I awoke for nearly 5 or 6 continuous hours, a rarity for me. And knowing that every morning and evening the men's and ladies' baths are swapped to provide entertainment variety for hotel patrons, I decided to bathe again the first thing after waking up. The other bath facility, now open to the men, was just as luxurious and beautiful as the prior, but different in design. And it was equally as fantastic. To my surprise, I was alone in the facility at around 7 a.m., so I could again capture more photos and video to share with you. It was incredible having the entire place to myself, even in the morning. The checkout time was at 11 a.m. However, I left a little bit earlier on the shuttle bus back to the Izu-Atagawa station to do some further exploring of the town out of curiosity and for finding some other possible imaging sites. Similar to the Izu Kogen station you may have seen in the prior Astrophotography Japan episode 29 video, this station also had a hot spring foot bath. Actually, it was larger and more stylish here, but I had places to explore and just took a hot bath anyways, so I passed on that opportunity. From the station down to the oceanside beach was a fairly steep downhill walk along narrow streets with streams and hot water drainage ditches steaming along several roads. There was so much clean natural hot spring water coming out of the ground here that it simply overflowed into the drains and streams that eventually emptied into the ocean. The town seemed to be not much more than hotels and restaurants and hot springs, with some residential homes dispersed here and there as well. It was a beautiful, traditional-style resort area off the beaten path with lovely Japanese character and probably not well known to international tourists. I strolled along the beach, which I suspect must be pretty popular in the summertime. It was sandy, clean, and seemed to have a gentle underwater slope, perfect for swimming and family fun. And then I saw it. A wide concrete seawall jutting out about 100 meters into the ocean, upcurrent from the beach. Its purpose was obviously to protect the sand, minimize the waves, and keep the beach stable and secure from endless churn and occasional storms. I looked around. No artificial lights and no lighthouses. I could not believe it. That concrete pier was far away from any artificial lights, with unobstructed views to the northeast and all the way around to the south. It appeared to be an ideal deep sky imaging site. The only thing on the horizon was Oshima Island at nearly 50 kilometers away to the east, which would not affect imaging of anything much above the waterline. This was it. Easy train access, dark Bortle Class 4 skies, no nearby artificial lighting, secluded, stable, but easily accessible. It should be ideal for an all-night imaging session in the coming summer months. Stay tuned. Thank you for joining me on another video travel adventure. I hope you enjoyed the combination focus of imaging the night skies and a bit of a Japan cultural experience. Here in Yokohama, I'm JP Astro Guy. My name is Paul Cheesegel, and you have been watching Astrophotography Japan.